Hi everyone, my name is Antoine, and welcome to a new episode of BioMarine 360. Here we are touring the world to discover the key innovators of the sustainable blue economy. Whether it's aquaculture, industry, investment, policymaking, or research, all of these people have a clear blue vision, and my goal is to help you find yours too. Today I will be interviewing Marc Onge, CEO of Small Foods and Ben Beauty. Marc is a Halifax-based entrepreneur and investor. He genuinely believes that in order to safeguard the future generations, we need an immediate shift towards a transformative economy that will be centered around environmental sustainability and the collective well-being of the global community. His first company, Small Food, is introducing a microalgae fermentation platform that is evolving the way the world is nourished. Using a range of marine microorganisms, Small Food can produce proteins, lipids, and polysaccharides that can then be used in feed and food applications. Secondly, Ben Beauty is pioneering evidence-based nutraceuticals targeting skin health, UV protection, and longevity. All of this with a special focus on sustainable marine ingredients. Now, before learning a bit more about Marc, don't forget that I will be leaving company information in the description below. Until then, I hope you liked the interview. Let's go. So thank you, Marc, for being with me here today on BioMarine 360. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your projects. But first, could you give a quick introduction about yourself, your background, and how you got to what you're doing today?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Antoine. I've actually been an entrepreneur in the natural health product space for about 23 years now. So it's a substantial part of my life where I've kind of been, curious and in pursuit of knowledge and research in this whole field. Really trying to build better models for how people can, sustain health and well-being. I live here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is a unique kind of, area in terms of it's very, very integrated into marine life. We're virtually living on an island here in Nova Scotia. So it's an element that is in your blood. I'd say it's probably in your DNA as well, responds to the various, sights and sounds and smells of marine life. So it's really been a key inspiration for me to pursue a path that not only kind of is focused on health and well-being, but also through a lens of all the gifts that the ocean, the marine environment has to offer, humanity.
Okay, so very focused on Nova Scotia. I like it. So if we start from the first company that you were working on, so after you sold Ascenta Health, you started working on new projects, and notably on Small Food and Ben Beauty. So what really led you towards creating these two new companies and make it to what you are doing today?
Yeah, so Ascenta was a really an incredible journey for me. There's a lot of professional and personal growth, and we set out to be the best in the world in marine fatty acids, the omega-3 category. Mm-hmm. We developed new science and technology, and we brought very innovative solutions. So I was really proud of what we had accomplished. But when I look forward and kind of what launched me into doing something new and different with Small Food and with Ben Beauty is, it's not only about developing new solutions for health and well-being, and it's not only about the whole idea of doing things to address also sustainability issues. Mm-hmm. But I really felt there's a need to really innovate whole business models, how we operate as businesses, how we interact with all our various stakeholders, how businesses actually can work in very much akin to a natural ecosystem. And that was always the fascination for me is, I've always been super connected to nature. And I think one of the most interesting attributes of nature is these very highly diverse ecosystems. and that the relationships in these ecosystems shift away from hyper competition into hyper collaboration. So, there's you see examples of synergy and reciprocity built within ecosystems. There's a lot more efficiency, and ultimately, what we also see is that the net productivity of these ecosystems is much greater by the components acting in a coordinated fashion, a mutualistic fashion. So, wouldn't it be nice if we could actually design communities of businesses that could operate using these kind of models that lift the overall productivity by reestablishing ways of or systems that facilitate collaboration, communication, and synergy. So that's why kind of moving from a single company into multiple companies, as well as some of the companies that I support as a mentor, as a business coach, really kind of mapping out what are those models that are required to create those natural business ecosystems.
Absolutely. And I really think notably in Canada, really linking all the various sectors together, because there's such distances between each one of them, is really important to really create a viable economic model for everyone to work on.
Right.
So, yeah.
I guess you were asking as well, Small Food and Ben Beauty, those two companies kind of are, once again, they more naturally flow out of the work I was doing, which was a real focus in marine ingredients, natural health products, really looking at where there are gaps in the marketplace to create some very innovative IP, and making sure that, once again, that aligns with my personal values. And so that was more specifically, informing what Small Food was going to do and what Ben Beauty was going to do.
Mm-hmm. So let's dive really into the subject. So let's first start with Small Food. So can you tell us a bit more what's the main goal of Small Foods? What's the key innovations behind the company?
Yeah, so Small Food is, a lot of people just learning about Small Food, but the technology has been in development since 2009. So it's a really, it's one of those areas where it took a tremendous amount of pioneering research and development and investment to even build a technology platform like this. And I think more and more we're hearing the term fermentation used in conjunction with our food systems. And there's certainly traditional forms of fermentation that have been around for all recorded history. But when we look at the more modern age of fermentation as it relates to food, we talk about biomass fermentation, right? The fact that we can use single cell organisms, which are the most energy efficient biological production systems on our whole planet, that we can use them to do really, really incredible things. And so Small Food really set out to use this idea of microorganisms, in this case, microalgae, so marine-derived single-cell algae, as a novel way to produce food. And so, like I was saying, these are very, very efficient systems. So compared to traditional forms of producing food, that we can do this with far less utilization of our natural resources. And so if we go back to the start of this technology platform, what we were really looking to do is solve for the protein challenge that the world is facing. Because looking at it from, certainly as the world, as all these emerging markets are developing, and we're an expanded kind of middle class, demand for protein is increasing per capita, right? On top of that, we have an overall growing population that could reach 9 to 10 billion people by 2050. And as it stands today, just with our current population and the way that we produce protein on this planet, it's collapsing our natural ecosystems, right? The planet can no longer support this type of energy-intensive form of protein production.
Exactly.
And we are starting to see a bit of a transition away from animal-based protein, which is really, that's the big driver behind, climate change. And, livestock production sits just under transportation in terms of the big levers that are driving climate change from primarily a greenhouse gas perspective. Now, seeing some of the momentum shift into plant-based proteins is really, really encouraging to see. However, a University of Waterloo study, so University of Waterloo in Canada, they looked at this and they determined that by 2050, we'll have to find another landmass the size of Canada, second biggest country in the world, just to support enough production for this level of population growth. So we have two problems. One will be, can we produce enough protein for the human population? And secondly, can we do it in a way that can actually be sustained from, our various kind of planetary, boundaries? And that's a big question. And if you look at traditional forms of producing protein, whether it's, plant-based or livestock, the answer is really no, you can't do that. So we need to come up with very innovative solutions that can help to support the planet, to regenerate at the same time. We have a supply of protein that can feed the people across the globe. So the inherent challenge with microbes is there's such a diversity out there in our planet, terrestrial and aquatic systems. And we had a very, very specific goal in mind in terms of what does that perfect protein look like? What would be those attributes of that microorganism? And we weren't specifically looking at microalgae exclusively, right? Certainly there's a lot of interest there and a very diverse, a lot of diversity within that classification of microbes, but we are looking at also fungi, cyanobacteria, yeast, and to go there and find that perfect protein, over 20,000 different microorganisms were collected and were sequenced. And so this is one of the largest kind of bioprospecting sequencing efforts to date. Right? And from over 20,000 microorganisms, it produced one candidate. It happened to be a microalgae, a heterotrophic algae. And so then, of course, the next step is you're taking something from the wild. Can you domesticate that? Can you grow that biomass efficiently? Does it allow it to be scaled? And so on and so forth. So that took quite a few years. And then, of course, once you create the biomasses, can you actually sequentially extract the components of it that you want to commercialize, that the protein for the food ingredient industry, the lipids as well for it's important component to food ingredients as well as dietary supplements. And of course, in the aquatic worlds, we have so many really unique polysaccharides with so many different functional and sometimes biological properties. So there's been a lot of work to not just produce the biomass, to be able to pool the various ingredients so that they can actually be sold into the market.
Okay. Wow. And yeah, as you said, the size of Canada, that's really quite challenging. So it's definitely an option for us and almost an obligation to look towards the oceans to get this answer for the protein cycles. Absolutely. If we can bounce now on Ben Beauty. So there's a lot going on that side, completely different story as well. But would you say that UV protection from the inside out could be considered as the unique selling proposition for the brand?
Yeah, so Ben Beauty is truly, it's a nutraceutical company. And, having spent so many years in that industry through Ascenta Health, it was really interesting to see marine fatty acids, kind of the evolution of that. And, the category became very, very saturated. So we at Ben Beauty, I think also starting in 2009, looking at research in terms of where would be some of those condition-specific applications of marine lipids. And we were very fascinated. We came across some research that I think it came out of Canada, and they were looking at wound healing models. And so this is really interesting. They were actually using a very sophisticated way of transdermal absorption of the long chain omega-3 EPA and DHA. But of course, when you look at the biology of the skin, you say, well, the skin has a very efficient transportation system from the inside out. So you just have to be able to determine what ingredients, what nutrients have an affinity for the skin, can be absorbed and saturated in the skin from the inside out and produce a biological effect. And so we were looking at a host of different kind of applications. And one of the really compelling ones was UV protection, as you mentioned. And not only did we look at marine fatty acids, we started to look at a host of different nutrients, essential nutrients in the body, including antioxidants that once again also had an effect on the skin and could produce that biological effect. And that effect that we were looking to measure primarily was UV protection, the number one cause of accelerated skin aging. So it took quite a few years to create the background kind of clinical rationale, and then of course because it's such a unique concept, this idea of like a sunscreen from the inside out. We need to do our science, right? So it's great. We can do all kinds of work in our product chemistry lab, and make sure that our products are the best quality, have great stability, very, very pure. But will people trust us when we say, this is going to have that kind of UV effect? So we conducted both preclinical and clinical studies that have both demonstrated a very significant, actually much greater than what we anticipated. For instance, the human clinical trial, where participants took daily what we call our Renew and Protect formula. They took it daily for 8 weeks. And at the end of 8 weeks, their skin's natural resistance to UV protection was increased by 84%.
Wow.
And so surprising even to the clinical researchers on this trial. Now, we weren't the first to ever publish a trial like this, but if you go back into the literature, the effects that a lot of researchers were finding with these natural product formulations, between 10 and 20% improvement in that UV resistance over a similar kind of time period. So we kind of created this whole new bar, at 84%. And so that was very fascinating. And we said, okay, well, we need to also understand the mechanism of action. So within our cell biology research that we do here at Bend, we started to look at human dermal fibroblasts and keratinocytes in very controlled conditions, UVA versus UVB, different types of environmental stressors, free radicals, just really looking at the production of different types of proteins, inflammatory cytokines, looking at gene expression, and just overall, what impact, even the morphology of the cell when subjected to these types of very potent, free radical generators. And so that was also very, very conclusive. And that it was interesting that the UV effect was not just UVA, it was UVA and UVB. And that it was conferring properties that allowed the cell to protect the sensitive DNA, the nuclear material, which is the most important thing. It's like when we talk about UV protection, we certainly don't want, like, a burn is very uncomfortable, and a burn can accelerate aging quite a bit. But the most important thing is we don't want to impact our DNA, because that's where we start to look at precancerous conditions. And not to say that our product is going to protect against cancer. We've never done a trial such as that. But what we have been able to show that by consuming the product, these in a preclinical study, that the fibroblasts were able to protect the DNA against various doses of UVA and UVB radiation.
It's actually quite promising. Of course, as you said, we're not at the cancer part yet, but already preventing all the UV exposure is actually quite important, notably today in areas where it's getting more sunny, and people are actually affected by that. So I think it's the promising first step towards something, I think, much greater.
Yeah.
So now on a much more personal note, so you were mentioning you were in Halifax. So why did you stay in Nova Scotia? Do you consider it as the best place in the world for business?
Well, I'll first of all say that it's a very special place. I've been fortunate that in my my professional career that I've been able to travel the globe and to experience so many unique and wonderful places. But there is they say there's a true sense of place and home here. I think when you are completely surrounded by the ocean, that in the entire province of Nova Scotia, you're never more than 30 minutes away from the ocean, which is kind of always a nice, reassuring feeling. And, with the ocean, it's there's an element of mystery that, we know so little about the ocean. And
absolutely.
I think there's a more renewed interest in exploring that, especially the work that you do and the work that I do now, in understanding the sustainable development of some of the ocean resources. But the sights, the sounds, the smells, when I travel and I come back, it's the one thing that kind of gets me centered again. But if we look at from the place of a company that is really looking to do innovative research, we have a very unique situation here in Nova Scotia with a fairly small population, but a very, very high density of different leading academic institutes. And so we've developed very, very strong relationships with academic researchers at institutes like Dalhousie University, as well as our wonderful National Research Council of Canada, who have the base for their microalgae and macroalgae research here on the Atlantic coast. So it's, I talked earlier about kind of developing more of an ecosystem, an ecocentric model for doing business. And so we've been really trying to build meaningful long-term relationships with others that are kind of interested in exploring the same type of knowledge and commercial application. But conservation also, is a big part of what we do too. So it's, we work a lot with some local nonprofits. We work with nonprofits right across Canada. But of course, a lot of the nonprofits that exist in our region are, once again, they're focused on conservation within the marine environment. And so it truly feels like a collaborative ecosystem right here in Nova Scotia. And it seemed like not just a place I love to call home, but it's a great place for entrepreneurs and developing very progressive, innovative companies, cultivating some aspect of the blue economy, because I think we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg here.
Definitely, absolutely, and really, I just listening about Nova Scotia looks so great. And I really hope a lot of coastal areas would follow kind of the same business model to create some real wealth and local power. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Marc, thank you very much for being here with me today. Thank you for your time. I really look forward hearing a bit more about small food and Bem Beauty in the next months and years. And we'll be talking soon.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah.